I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 4, recorded on May 24th, 2018. Theme Thursday is a Gallup Webcast series that dives deep into the Clifton Strengths themes one at a time, and today's theme is connectedness. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window. If you just peek down there, it's available for you. We'd love to have you log in. I see a whole bunch of people listening, and not everybody is in chat. We'd love to have you ask your questions out there. Bottom left-hand corner is log in. Choose the guest account. Put your name in where it says guest. Take the numbers out. Hit submit, and you're in our chat room. You can also pop that chat out if you want to. A lot of people don't know that. There's two little red boxes.
Carry it along with you.
Right-hand corner. Just pop it out, put it in your pocket, take it with you. We'd love to have you in our chat room to ask us questions. If you're listening to the recorded version and have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or there's a contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. Just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching and Clifton Strengths coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and downloadable and offline audio. We call that podcasting. It's available for you on our coaches blog. Head out to the resources tab, go to coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget, if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app, you can just swipe and rate and review. We appreciate that. Subscribe while you're at it. It's a good way you get it automatically. If you're on YouTube, there's a great little red subscribe button bottom right-hand corner. Just click on subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we publish one of these. And if you're on Spreaker, you can follow us or subscribe there as well. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. She works as a workspace consultant here at Gallup. And Maika, it's always great to have you on Theme Thursday. Welcome.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks, Jim.
We are talking connectedness today, and I'm excited about this one because this is a little of a stealth one for me. It's in the middle, but I really love connecting things together to have them all make sense. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to take these things and say, this kind of happens for a reason, or this kind of, the reason this is that way is because of this. But that's not just what connectedness is. So we're going to dig deep into it today. Why don't we start with a little bit of a brief description of it?
Yeah, connectedness is a relationship building theme. It is about anticipating and embracing the seen and unseen connections between all things. So I think at the essence of connectedness, you've got integration, awareness, appreciation of people and things and ideas without really having to know. So it's a lot about looking at the bigger picture, being in tune to something beyond the immediate. So a part of it is I think it's an aspect of timelessness, being able to say, this is connected to something in the past or something in the future or something bigger that we're not even aware of. People with high connectedness, I find to be quite curious, but also quite aware and okay accepting mystery. So I think when you said you like finding the connections between this happened because of this, because of that, and it all makes sense. The part that wouldn't quite be connectedness is that desire to make sense. I think with connectedness, it's almost the calmness when things don't make sense, because it's embracing the parts of the answer that you don't quite understand as existing and having purpose and having value and being able to move forward through that mystery.
We've been spending a lot of time this season talking about success factors, what leads to this. Al has also been talking about that on our Mastery Monday blog. By the way, for the first time ever, I was smart enough to post that link right there on the live page. Imagine that, using technology to our advantage. So if you're currently listening live, and why wouldn't you listen live? You want to go to the Mastery Monday post, you can just click on that and go to it. But Maika, when we think about the best of connectedness, how does it really help us be successful?
Yeah, I think the value that connectedness brings is a calming tension, a calming emotion, perhaps calming panic, being able to take panic and turn it into calm about the current moment. And connectedness does that by expanding our awareness to something bigger, something longer, maybe even something more complex. It's a lot like, I got to take a coaching course this week, and one of my favorite coaches taught it, and she mentioned the idea of coaching this way. And I thought the metaphor that she used was really good for connectedness. She talks about taking a lid off a boiling pot of water. And I think in a lot of ways, connectedness can take the lid off and say, it's not just about this boiling pot. Let's look at the whole kitchen. I think the other value of connectedness is that it's unrestrained by time and practicality. So it's about creativity and offering an enhanced perspective. It's valuable in that you can help others see the effects that their actions have. I talked about this in a previous season, but in some ways, there's a very practical point to connectedness, which is that, hey, if I recycle my recyclables, that will help the planet, and the planet will last longer. Or it could be something as simple as, if I turn off the lights in my office, that's going to save me on my energy bill a month from now. So I think it's also about, hey, what if we do this right now? What effect is that going to have? Connectedness doesn't have to have quite so much of a direct cause-effect relationship, but it is that awareness that everything you do is going to have some sort of a ripple effect. So I live in a beautiful place right now with a lot of vegetation, and we realized it's now end of May right now. We realized that our lawn just doesn't look as good as our neighbors. So end of May, after the lawn has already been growing for a long time, we call the lawn people and we say, hey, come treat it. And of course, they were happy to take our money. But my neighbor told me that they got a consultation from the same lawn guy, and she asked more questions. She said, hey, when is the right time to treat this? And he says, it's actually about the end of August. You need to think about the effects of when you do something, what that will do. And he explained to her, he said, treating it in May, like your neighbor, me, will get you maybe a little bit of a benefit. But if you really start to seed the grass and think about eradicating some of these weeds before they get bad, that's how you're going to have a long-term effect. And I thought that was a great connectedness idea of, hey, it's not just this linear progress. Connectedness is zooming out, seeing the whole picture, and sort of moving through that picture.
That's a great example of something we can do and do well. What are some other things we should, kind of do more of or volunteer for?
I think do more sharing when you sense that others might be missing something. Understand you're going to see more connections than others. So ask yourself, hey, what's invisible in this situation that matters to people? How can you get that out of your gut and into your words?
Well, you just ended that pretty quick there.
I know. I had more in my mind, but that's the best way to say it. Get it out of your gut and into your words.
Yeah, I'm right there. What kind of environments help support our success with connectedness?
I think with connectedness, if you can gain access to perspectives that might otherwise be isolated, it's going to be in everyone's best interest. So ask for time that you can spend with other teams, with other departments, with maybe it's even with historical references or with resources or with people. If the more you can do of expanding your web, the more awareness you're going to have. Mary Sue Ingram talks in season 1 around connectedness about this idea of being a bridge builder, and bridges, I think, can connect otherwise isolated places. So that might be silos within your organization. That might be parts of perspective or parts of history that we're ignoring. Connectedness might be able to sense, hey, there's an opportunity to put a bridge right here. And you can enhance that sensing by turning it into actual action. So you can do that by just gaining access and building those relationships. Let's remember, I think it's really easy sometimes to describe connectedness and hear strategic, where strategic is about that sort of nonlinear process of asking about what if and if then. And that way, strategic sees almost like a flow chart of connections. It's not that. It is a relationship building theme. So it is a lot more about feeling, a lot about needing other people and sort of seeing not just a person right in front of you, but seeing their whole story, seeing their whole purpose. And not having to prove, not having to have that sort of clean solution, but moving through life and moving through your relationships from that understanding and that faith that we're all part of something bigger. So if you can find those connections and build those relationships in otherwise isolated places, that's a great environment to support connectedness.
Yeah, Maika, I like your emphasis on relationships and that, in the connecting of people, because I think you mentioned strategic. I think ideation is also one of those it can get confused with, because it's not just a matter of a bunch of ideas coming together. Why don't you talk a little bit more about what it's not? Because I think connectedness gets confused quite a bit.
Yeah. So I think if you've got high connectedness, you can let go of needing to have proof in order to believe. And that might mean to believe in ideas, to believe in strategies, to believe in possibilities, to believe in people. You don't have to have evidence with connectedness. You can let go of having to win through logic. And instead, you can think about winning and succeeding through sensing and feeling. It's a more empathic theme than it is a conceptual theme, in a lot of ways. I have connectedness number 6, and for many reasons, I think that connectedness is probably what brought me to where I am right now. And I also have communication and strategic and ideation. So a lot of my way of thinking and feeling, behaving is all about contextualizing things and seeing cause and effect relationships and asking about what if and if then. But that connectedness piece, what that brings, that I think a lot of those other like strategic and ideation and for me communication do not bring, is when I think I figured it all out on my own, when I think I can repackage an idea, when I think I can come up with the very best plan, that all feels very, very black and white, to be honest, very purposeful, very logical. Connectedness adds a depth of mystery, a depth of sort of feeling where I don't actually have to come to the answer. And I don't pretend that I'm going to come to the answer on my own. A lot of times connectedness, I think, sounds religious. It does not have to be. But it does have almost that spiritual embracing of the unknown to it.
It's we've been asking this season a lot about sorting. How does it sort, And so any thoughts on that, Maika, as we think about what is connectedness or how does it sort?
I think it sorts. I want to use the word purpose, but don't confuse the word purpose with like value or mission or intent. I think connectedness sorts to what's going to have a lasting effect. So connectedness probably is able to not have to sort a whole lot, to be totally honest. Connectedness probably doesn't have to be the logical decision maker that says this is going to happen because I said this. Right. But I think what connectedness can do is sort of let go of a lot of the pieces or anxiety drivers or events that are throwing people off. Connectedness can let go of that sort of highly charged negative emotion and sort to something bigger, some sort of other purpose, sort to the ability to say, okay, this is happening because XYZ. And it could be, and you might think about futuristic having that similar ability to sort of stabilize and say things might seem crazy now, but I'm looking 5 years down the road and they're not crazy, so it's all right. Similarly, I think connectedness has that handle on time, but it's not about a future focus. It's about a timeless focus. It's about sort of being there in the moment, not having to have the answer, but still making the best decision for the effects that are going to happen down the road.
Yeah, I kind of think of it in terms of effects to outcomes. So here's our event. Sorry, here's an event, and here's its outcome. But in the bigger, things never happen in isolation. And so, in the bigger scheme of things, my arranger loves this. By the way, I love to connect with people who have this high because it can put some additional pieces together for me that I may not see. Yeah. And I may be sorting for effectiveness with the maximizer or arranger. I may be sorting for effectiveness and not seeing the entire story. And so I think connectedness has this ability to take events and then see outcomes and say why. Why is this happening this way? Not just strict cause and effect, but in the whole scope of things, in a global scope or in a bigger scope, company, corporate, some of those kinds of things. Help put those pieces together, and not necessarily. It's not a zero sum game. It's not a it doesn't always have to nicely fit together either. I think to what you're saying, it just does fit together this way.
So this is a connectedness moment. And when you hear people with high connectedness speak, oftentimes they'll talk about that once they have the language. I think, so I'm just going to go with this. We watched the movie Arrival last weekend, and it's about, if you haven't seen it, it's a great connectedness movie, in my opinion. It's about a linguist who is asked to interpret a new language of aliens who land on the planet. And it turns out these aliens don't speak in a linear way. They don't progress through their sentences from beginning to end. Instead, they speak sort of circular through pictures. And the way they speak changes the way that they think. And it is about this ability of thinking about the world in a holistic view, thinking about life from like beginning to end all at the same time. And I wasn't going to mention that movie because I was like, I don't think that many people saw it. It's going to date this podcast. But a part of that movie is the phrase, not a zero-sum game. And Jim, I've never heard you say that before. I don't think I've ever said it to you before. But that connection, when you said that, just lit up something in my brain. And if I only had ideation and strategic, I would have latched onto that as, wow, that's really cool. But because I also have connectedness, it kind of made my my stomach smile too. Like, it wasn't just my brain that was excited about that. It was this taking a clue from the universe that this is the right way to go. And I shy away from describing connectedness that way because I think it creates a lot of bias, that it's not like helpful in a business sense, or it shouldn't be taken seriously. But in a lot of ways, connectedness helps you catch things that other people don't catch. It helps you stay curious about serendipitous moments, and it helps you notice little things that could become bigger drivers for something big. And that, I mean, if I could have just described a financial advisor with that kind of power, wouldn't you want to hire them? It is, I think, about keeping that ecosystem-wide feelers out on how your entire organization is behaving, from the past to the present to the future, what the connections are between your power players and your talent within your organization, what the connections are between your strategy and what kind of effect that's going to have. And when you think about it that way, it's a little mystical, but it sure is helpful.
So in a full connectedness moment, like it's weird. Last night, I watched a video on a meta-analysis of the movie Arrival, and I did not watch it.
We did not talk about this in our pre-show either. I did not know that.
No, I didn't. I never would have put two and two together, but I was combing through YouTube, watching some videos, and I like to learn stuff. And so the movie come up, and it had talked about the circular logic that, or to the language, right? And what a really good, I think, a really good description, if we think of connectedness, of seeing it all from a global standpoint, and that all things relate together. It's just making those connections. That interesting. Well, that's a weird connected moment. We did not plan that at all. How weird. All right. So when working with connectedness, what should we expect?
Okay, so if you have somebody with high connectedness on your team, don't expect them to get riled or overly reactive in the moment. Do expect an enhanced perspective beyond this moment in time. So I think that means you're working with somebody with high connectedness. Tap into what they're sensing. Ask them for, hey, what are you sort of feeling, or why do you think this is happening? They will probably be able to, I think, take clues from what they already know and what they're noticing now to be able to help us learn from where we've been in order to go somewhere better.
And how do we recognize it's a hard one. I don't know if I know the answer to this, but how do we recognize those?
I took this idea in two places. I thought, how do we recognize and what do we recognize? And I think for the what do we recognize the ripples that they create, recognize the impact that they have on their community. And think about that word community to mean maybe it's their team, maybe it's their organization, maybe it's their family. And then how do we recognize, what if you recognize somebody with high connectedness by celebrating those ripples? So writing a thank you note to their family for loaning them to your client, or planting a tree in their honor in a place that's really important to them. It's not about necessarily the singular person, but the effect that person has, or the connection that person has on other people. So celebrate that.
And how do we stretch those with high connectedness?
I think you can help connectedness develop by just asking what it is that they're sensing. Create a space for them to explore, and explore with them. Don't be afraid to go into those spaces that don't seem like they have an outcome. Ask them what the connections are, what the effects are of the actions that's currently being taken. Think about sort of using them as an advisor to think about what are the relationship building implications of any action that we're about to take, and also give them an opportunity to translate those into information. Translate that into persuasiveness. It is a relationship building theme, but think about the sort of influential power of connectedness if you're given the space and the practice and maybe even the words from other people who are good with words to describe the cause and effect relationship you're sensing.
And then how do we partner with them?
Coming back to what we mentioned about if you're the person with connectedness getting access to those islands, you can be a good partner for connectedness by helping provide access to the system. It might be about making introductions. If you're going to ask somebody with connectedness to work on your project, set aside time for them to meet the stakeholders on that project. Give them space to do some sensing. Ask them what they're noticing. Don't force them to live in a fact-based sort of opinion space, but give them that opportunity to say, here's who all the players are. Maybe even give them the opportunity to ask, hey, what are your stories? Where did you come from? Where might be some of those connections? So I haven't talked a whole lot about the connections between people, because I think that's where people end their understanding of connectedness. That is a piece of it, but that's not the whole picture. But because we haven't talked about it, before we wrap, we need to talk about what are, that ability to say, hey, I showed up in a foreign country and I met somebody who knew somebody else who knew somebody that I knew. And that is one manifestation of connectedness, is how it enhances your social world, how it's that sort of brilliant idea of not really letting the breadcrumbs just be breadcrumbs, but really building them together into something and following them. And in many ways that can be, you're never alone because there's always some way that you're connected to somebody that you're around.
I was going to hold this for the post show, but let's address it a little bit. Paul out in the chat room had been talking about, I think sometimes, and we might even say this in our wording of this, in that this idea of connectedness and everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes I think gets twisted into that everything happens for a good reason, which is not always true, right? Bad things happen to good people. And bad things happen, right? And I think, Maika, as we think through this, that's a little, for someone who just went through a very traumatic event, and then for someone with high connectedness to say, well, everything happens for a reason. I think we have to be really, really careful in that space to not overpaint the picture, or not to paint over the picture with so much reason in that we miss what was the true impact of the event as it happened, and how did it have on that. And for someone just to say, those are dangerous words, by the way, I think, well, everything happens for a reason. Do I really want to hear that if I've just really gone through a traumatic event in my life? And is that the right thing to say? How just respond to that a little bit for me?
It is part of our definition. It's also a phrase that is used in popular conversation. So that, I think, makes it hard. Connectedness, as a Clifton Strengths theme, does believe and understand the connections between all things. And that can lead to understanding the reasoning of why things happen. I think the phrase everything happens for a reason is only helpful if it's the beginning of a conversation. It's not so helpful if it's just period, move on. But if it's the beginning of a conversation and it's a welcome conversation, then it can be helpful. I think connectedness can bring value in helping us understand possible leads or possible implications, or zooming out and realizing, gosh, a traumatic event is traumatic and that's okay. And there's more. And you're going to wake up tomorrow, and you're going to do great things. That's how to take connectedness and use it in a calming way. But the essence of the theme is not about making people feel good or bad. It's just about understanding the interactive ecosystem that we're in. It's about knowing that, gosh, I just saw that bees are being put on the endangered species list. And what is that going to mean for agriculture? And what is that going to mean for the economy? And sort of being able to grow into those connections. And I think that can lead you to problem solving that other people would miss. It can lead you to understanding that other people might not see. But if it's leading you to a place where you're hurting people, then that's just poor behavior. That's not because of the theme.
Yeah. I know there's some great conversation in chat. A good reason to be here live. I can't repeat it all, but there is a lot of those sentiments. Like, we have to ask those questions and listen. We have to understand the entire situation. I just think that phrase if it can be used improperly, to try to cover over an uncomfortable situation, or well, everything happens for a reason,
right?
And you're like, well, okay, that's not that just doesn't cover things for people. We need to know what the reasons are and why, and what are we going to do next. I think that's a really important part of what we're talking about this year, is then what do we do with that? Like, it's not just enough to claim it. What do we do with it?
Yeah, how do you make sure that it's successful? And I also think we didn't talk about this because I think we covered it pretty well in our previous seasons, but since we're here, that phrase, everything happens for a reason, I think sometimes is why people ascribe religion or spirituality to connectedness, because sometimes it feels like that, well, I'm not going to know the answer. That's the end of it. It's just what I believe. But that reason, I think, for people with connectedness could also be economics. It could be science. It could be strategy. It could be chaos. That could be the reason in itself. So I think it's also important not just to say that connectedness is the same as blind faith.
Yeah, no, it's good. Okay, we have some challenges and assignments to give out to individuals this season. You can find those assignments. They're available on the post for this. If we've posted this out to the coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you follow Maika at Strengths Talk on Instagram, she posts them there. Maika, let's go through our challenges.
Yeah. So again, this is how do you invest in it if you have high connectedness? 3 ideas for you. 1, I'd like you to try out an app that quiets your mind. Now, you're going to have to go out and find the best one for you and come back and tell us which ones you found. But look for an app, something on your smartphone or your computer that's going to help you quiet your mind so that you can really get in tune to what you're sensing. So maybe it's meditation, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's mindfulness. Find an app and try it out. Number 2, spend an hour talking with a trusted friend about this question. In what direction is your gut nudging you? I'm using gut here and sounding a lot like empathy, but it is a lot about that connectedness sort of knows things that aren't crossing the neurons in your brain. So it's about how do you create some space for those connections? Again, that question, in what direction is your gut nudging you? And number 3, ask someone to tell you their story. What brought them to where they are today?
3 good challenges there.
3 good
to take
challenges.
on. We want to hear from you if you haven't joined our Facebook group yet,
Yeah.
facebook.com/groups/call2coach. Many of you have been joining us over from the webcast. We appreciate that. I have a little statement that I ask him, Maika, how'd you find us? Many of them are saying Theme Thursday. So we appreciate you guys coming over from that if you're listening. We'll post those challenges there. If you're having great success with these challenges, we want to hear about what you're learning through
Yeah.
them.
We also have a lesser theme challenge. So if you don't have high connectedness, two things you can do there. So
Right
the first 3 or 4 folks with high connectedness where you consider it a dominant theme. But if it's not, 2 ideas. Number 1, how do you find calmness in the middle of chaos? It could be a theme. It could be a practice. Just name what it is that brings you calm when things seem sort of out of control. Number 2, how do you feel when there isn't a concrete answer to a challenge? I just want you to explore that. What does that do for you? Don't apologize for it. Just name how you feel.
There you go.
There you go.
We
Challenges. You've got 30 minutes of how do you take this theme of connectedness and move it past just who you are into what you can really practice and what you can do to lead you to success. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to me to hear from some real success factors in this. I'd love to see these in our Facebook group so I can read them. Sometimes we do a lot of the defining, but I kind of want to know, how are you having success? And let's be specific with it. I think there's some great options for you to put those out there. Maika, final thoughts as we think about wrapping this and going into a little bit of post-show?
I can't believe we both thought about the same movie that not a lot of people had even seen. And somehow there was something out there that led it to being a good idea and led us both to saying it out loud. Now, I do have connectedness. And my challenge is connectedness and communication. I'm always driven to name it and to teach people about it. But right now I'm going to take the communication out and say, I don't know why that happened, but I think it was effective and I'm happy about it. So take from that what you might learn about connectedness. And thank you for sharing. If you're somebody who has high connectedness, thank you for demonstrating it and for practicing it and putting in a space that we can all benefit from it.
Well, as communicators, it certainly gave us a common, marker in our conversation to be able to kind of point to prove that point. And I think there's an element right there of it being effective for both of us. Thanks for having that connectedness. This is one I still kind of I'm learning and figuring out. I enjoy being around those who have it, but there's always learning to do. And hopefully you've learned as well. We're hearing from a lot of you who always say, oh man, I appreciate the work that you guys are doing through Theme Thursday. Mike, I think I get an email a week or two from folks that are doing that are learning so much. We appreciate hearing from you. So if you let us know if you're learning from it, if you're passing along, if you're watching it in a big group, how can we be more effective in what we're doing? We appreciate hearing back from you, and we want to thank you for coming out and listening. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. Some big changes going on out there right now. As of May 24th, we did a big price change this week, and so if you only have top 5 and you want to get all 34. You can now do that for a lot less as of today. So head out there, Gallup Strengths Center, to get that done, gallupstrengthscenter.com. Scroll down a little bit. The pricing's a page or two down to get that done. But that upgrade right now, $39.99. If you know a certified coach, they have a special code that will get that for you for just $30. And so, but you need to contact them. Contact your local favorite certified coach if you're not one of those and ask them. Plus, maybe schedule a little coaching. That'd be good as well. We'd love to see you do that as well. Don't forget, we have a link to all our resources, everything that's available out of the coach's blog, go to coaching.gallup.com, click on the resources tab. If you're thinking about becoming a coach, you're like, I'd like to see some training that would lead to this. You can do that through our courses page, courses.gallup.com. And we have a little summit going on this July. We'd love to see you 16th, 17th, and 18th. If it's after that, we probably have another summit going on. You can go to cliftonstrengthssummit.com. Still time to join us for the summer, Mike. I can't wait to see you.
Our summit's going to be so good. We'll talk about this in the post show. You should come.
We will. Join us on our Facebook group. I mentioned that already. Facebook.com/groups/called2coach, TO, and that called to coach will get you there as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you're listening live, and you only get the post show if you listen live or subscribe to the live channel, but we'd love to have you stay around for a little bit of post show. We got some time, and we're looking forward to that. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.